Let me tell you something strange about women's desire. We live in a world where, in most cases, men are the ones who pursue women. However, few men know how to make a woman desire them. And here is the question that always remains in people's minds. What really goes through a woman's mind when she desires a man? Is it truly difficult, or is it just a limiting belief of your own? This is really a game, and you only have to learn how to play it. What you see on the surface has nothing to do with what lies underneath. There is a huge psychological game that makes all the difference. The first thing you need to understand is the psychology of scarcity versus abundance. Women are hardwired to be attracted to what feels scarce, valuable, and hard to obtain. This isn't about being materialistic or shallow. It's basic human psychology that applies to everyone, men and women alike. When something is easily available, we don't value it as much. When something is rare or limited, we suddenly want it more. Think about it this way. If you walked into a store and everything was on clearance, marked down, desperate to be sold, would you feel like you were getting something valuable? Probably not. But if you walked into that same store and there was one item, limited edition, exclusive, with a waiting list, your brain immediately assigns more value to it. That's scarcity psychology, and it applies to relationships too. When a man is constantly available, always texting back immediately, rearranging his schedule to accommodate a woman, and making it clear that she's his number one priority from day one, he's essentially putting himself on clearance. He's communicating, whether he means to or not, that his time isn't valuable, his attention isn't in demand, and he doesn't have other options. Now, I'm not saying that being kind and attentive is bad, but there's a difference between being genuinely interested and being desperate. When a man ignores a woman or pulls back his attention, he creates scarcity. Suddenly, his time feels more valuable. His attention becomes something she has to work for. And here's the kicker. That makes her want it more. She starts wondering, why isn't he texting me back? What's he doing? Who is he with? Is he talking to other women? That uncertainty creates a psychological tension that can actually increase attraction. But, and this is important, this only works if there was already some level of interest to begin with. If a woman has zero attraction to you, ignoring her won't magically create desire. It'll just confirm that you're not interested, and she'll move on without a second thought. The scarcity principle amplifies existing attraction. It doesn't create it from nothing. So here's what you need to know. Value is communicated through behavior. When your attention is freely given without any sense that you have standards or other priorities, it signals low value. When your attention is selective, intentional, and not always available, it signals high value. Women respond to that signal on a deep psychological level. Let's talk about the validation trap. Here's something most men don't realize. Women are socialized from a young age to seek validation through attention and approval. We grow up in a world that constantly reinforces the message that our value is tied to how much we're desired, how much attention we receive, and how attractive we are to others. Whether it's social media, advertising, or cultural messaging, women are taught that being wanted equals being valuable. Because of this conditioning, many women, especially those who are used to getting a lot of male attention, develop what I call a validation addiction. Their self-esteem becomes dependent on external confirmation of their desirability. They need that constant stream of likes, compliments, messages, and attention to feel good about themselves. Now here's where the man who ignores her becomes psychologically powerful. When a guy doesn't give her the attention she expects, it disrupts her validation system, She's used to men falling all over themselves to compliment her, text her, pursue her. That's her normal. So when you don't play that game, when you don't give her that automatic validation, it creates a psychological gap that she needs to fill. Her brain starts asking questions. Why isn't he interested? Am I not attractive enough? What does he see in other women that he doesn't see in me? Does he have better options? These questions aren't necessarily conscious. She might not even realize she's thinking them, but they create a powerful emotional drive to win your attention and approval. This is why the hottest women, the ones who are used to getting constant male attention, are often the most affected by being ignored. They're not used to it. Their entire sense of value has been built on the foundation of always being pursued, always being wanted, always being validated. When that suddenly stops, it shakes their confidence and makes them want to restore that validation by winning over the one guy who isn't giving it freely. But here's the thing. This dynamic only reveals something about her psychological needs. It doesn't necessarily mean she's genuinely attracted to you as a person. She might just be attracted to the challenge, to the opportunity to prove her desirability by winning over someone who seems indifferent. That's why some women will chase hard when you ignore them. But the moment you start showing real interest, they lose interest just as quickly. They were never interested in you. They were interested in the validation of conquering you. Understanding this helps you see through superficial attraction. Is she interested in you, or is she just uncomfortable with the fact that you're not interested in her? That's a crucial distinction. Now let's dive into what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. This is one of the most powerful psychological principles when it comes to human behavior and addiction. Here's how it works. When a reward is unpredictable, when you don't know if or when you're going to get it, your brain becomes obsessed with pursuing it. Think about gambling. Why do people get addicted to slot machines? Because sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you never know when the next win is coming. That unpredictability keeps you pulling the lever over and over again, hoping for that next hit of reward. Your brain releases dopamine not just when you win, but in anticipation of potentially winning. That's intermittent reinforcement at work. The same principle applies to relationships and attraction. When a man is consistently available and predictable, always texting back right away, always available when she wants to hang out, always giving her attention, he's providing constant reinforcement. There's no mystery, no uncertainty, no anticipation. And without those elements, the brain doesn't get that dopamine spike that creates addictive attraction. But when a man ignores a woman or is inconsistent with his attention, he creates intermittent reinforcement. Sometimes he responds, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he's warm and engaging, sometimes he's distant and unavailable. This unpredictability triggers that same dopamine response that makes slot machines so addictive. She doesn't know when she's going to get your attention, so every time she does get it, it feels like a win. And every time she doesn't, she's motivated to keep trying to get that reward again. This is why women often say they miss the chase or they're more attracted to guys who are a challenge. What they're really describing is the addictive quality of intermittent reinforcement, the uncertainty, the unpredictability, the not knowing if or when they'll get your attention creates a psychological compulsion to keep pursuing. Now, before you think this means you should play mind games or be intentionally hot and cold, let me be clear. Authentic unpredictability is different from manipulation. If you're genuinely busy, if you have a life full of priorities and purposes that sometimes take precedence over responding to texts immediately, that creates natural, intermittent reinforcement. That's attractive. But if you're sitting there staring at your phone, deliberately waiting hours to respond just to seem busy, that's manipulation. And most women will eventually see through it. The key is to actually be someone whose attention is genuinely limited because you have other valuable things going on in your life. That creates authentic unpredictability that women respond to on a deep psychological level. Let's talk about something that might make you uncomfortable: the role of evolutionary psychology in female attraction. I know, people sometimes dismiss evolutionary psychology as oversimplified or outdated, but there are real patterns here that explain a lot about human behavior, especially when it comes to mating and relationships. From an evolutionary perspective, women have always faced higher costs and risks when choosing mates. Pregnancy, childbirth, and raising children required enormous resources and protection. A poor choice in mate could literally mean the difference between survival and death for a woman and her offspring. Because of these high stakes, women evolved to be extremely selective about who they chose as partners. One of the key traits women evolved to look for was status and social value. A man who had high status in the group, who had resources and respect from others, could provide better protection and resources for a woman and her children. And how do you signal high status? By demonstrating that you have options, that other people value your time and attention, that you're not desperate or needy. When a man ignores a woman or doesn't seem particularly impressed by her, it unconsciously signals that he might be high value. After all, a low-value man with no options would jump at any opportunity with an attractive woman. A high-value man with plenty of options can afford to be selective, can afford to walk away, can afford to not chase. That selectivity and confidence signals status on a deep evolutionary level. This doesn't mean women are consciously thinking about evolutionary fitness when they're attracted to a guy who ignores them. These patterns operate on an unconscious level. It's just the way our brains are wired after thousands of generations of evolution. The man who doesn't need her, who has other priorities and options, unconsciously triggers her attraction mechanisms, because those traits historically correlated with high-value mates. Here's where it gets interesting. This evolutionary wiring is why confident indifference is so attractive to women. Not arrogance, not rudeness, but genuine confidence and comfort with yourself that makes you unaffected by whether any particular woman is interested in you or not. That confidence signals high value because it suggests you have options and don't need to settle for anyone who isn't genuinely right for you. But there's a flip side to this. Evolutionary psychology also explains why this dynamic can be toxic in some cases. Some women are unconsciously drawn to men who are emotionally unavailable, dismissive, or even borderline abusive, because those traits can mimic high status and confidence. That's why understanding the psychology is so important. Just because something triggers attraction doesn't mean it's healthy or sustainable. Now we need to address something crucial: the difference between genuine high-value behavior and game playing. Because there's a very fine line here, and crossing it can actually destroy any chance you have with a quality woman. Here's the truth. Ignoring a woman works when it comes from a place of genuine self-respect and having other priorities in your life. It backfires when it comes from a place of manipulation or trying to create an artificial sense of value. Women can sense the difference, even if they can't articulate it. Let me explain what I mean by genuine high-value behavior. A genuinely high-value man is busy building his career, pursuing his passions, maintaining his friendships, working on his goals, and living a purposeful life. Because of this, He's not always immediately available. He doesn't respond to texts instantly because he's focused on other things. He doesn't rearrange his entire schedule for a woman he just met because he has commitments and priorities. He's not playing hard to get. He actually is hard to get because his life is full of meaningful activities and responsibilities. That kind of unavailability is attractive because it's authentic. It signals real value. It shows that he has standards, purpose, and a life beyond just pursuing relationships. Women respect that because it demonstrates actual high value rather than just trying to appear high value. On the other hand, game playing is when a guy is sitting at home with nothing to do, staring at his phone, deliberately waiting hours to respond to a text just to seem busy. It's canceling plans at the last minute just to appear unpredictable. It's being cold or distant, not because you're genuinely focused on other things, but because you're trying to manipulate her emotions. That's not high-value behavior. That's insecurity disguised as confidence, and most women will eventually see through it. The difference matters because one approach creates sustainable attraction based on genuine compatibility and respect, while the other creates a toxic dynamic based on manipulation and game playing. If you want a quality relationship with a quality woman, you need to actually become genuinely high value, not just fake it. This means investing in yourself. Build your career, develop your skills, pursue your hobbies and passions, maintain strong friendships, work on your physical health and fitness. Create a life that's so full and purposeful that you genuinely don't have time to be constantly available to every woman who shows interest. When that happens, the unavailability becomes authentic, and that's when it's most attractive. Quality women, the ones worth having long-term relationships with, can tell the difference between a man who's genuinely high value and a man who's playing games to appear high value. They're attracted to the former and repelled by the latter. Let's talk about emotional investment and the chase dynamic. This is where a lot of men get confused and end up shooting themselves in the foot. Here's the principle. People value what they invest in and work for more than what comes easily. This applies to everything in life, not just relationships. Think about it. A degree you worked hard for feels more valuable than one that was handed to you. Money you earned through effort feels more satisfying than money you were given. The same principle applies to relationships. When a woman has to invest time, energy, and emotion into winning your attention and interest, she becomes more attached to you. She's put in work, so her brain rationalizes that you must be worth it. Otherwise, why would she have invested so much? This is called effort justification, and it's a powerful psychological mechanism. On the flip side, when a man does all the chasing, all the investing, all the work to win a woman over, she doesn't develop that same level of investment and attachment. She didn't have to work for it. It was freely given, so it doesn't feel as valuable to her. This is why the man who ignores a woman or pulls back creates an opportunity for her to chase. And when she starts chasing, when she starts putting in effort to get your attention, she's investing. And that investment creates attachment and attraction on her end. But here's the critical nuance that most men miss. This doesn't mean you should never invest or never show interest. Attraction is not a one-way street. If you're completely cold and unavailable all the time, most women will eventually give up and move on, especially if they're emotionally healthy and have self-respect. The key is balance. You want to create enough space and challenge that she has to invest and chase a little, but not so much distance that she feels like it's hopeless or not worth the effort. It's a dance. You pull back a little, she leans in. You show some interest, she responds. You pull back again, she invests more. This back and forth creates the tension and dynamic that builds real attraction. The problem is when guys either go too far in one direction or the other, too available, too invested, always chasing, and she loses interest because there's no challenge. Too distant, too unavailable, never showing interest, and she gives up because it feels like rejection rather than challenge. Understanding this balance is crucial. You want her to feel like she has a chance, like you're interested enough that pursuing you isn't futile, but not so interested that she doesn't have to work for it at all. That sweet spot is where the most powerful attraction dynamics happen. Finally, let's address the most important question. What should you actually do with this information? The most successful approach is to use these principles in the early stages to generate attraction and interest, and then gradually transition into more consistent, available, and emotionally close behavior as the relationship develops. The goal is not to play hard to get forever, but to establish yourself as a high-value man at the beginning and then build a real connection from there. So yes, ignoring a woman can make her desire you more, but only if it comes from real value, not manipulation. There is already some existing attraction, it's done authentically, and it eventually evolves into a genuine connection. Understanding why some women are attracted to men who aren't always available isn't about playing games. It's about understanding human nature, so you can present yourself authentically as a man with options, standards, and priorities beyond simply seeking female attention. When you genuinely become that man, attraction happens naturally. You don't need to pretend to be hard to get. You truly are, because your life has purpose, and you only make space for people who genuinely add value to it. That's the real secret. Subscribe to my channel if you want to succeed with the woman you want, because remember, information is power, and here I give it to you for free. Have a great day.